Hey, about 2.5 years ago, our elders, which is our primary leadership team, they oversee me in my job. They kind of oversee vision and mission. They came to me and said, hey, Josh, in order to keep you and your family healthy, we want you to start getting into a rhythm of every year being gone for a month. And man, this is the first year that we're able to actually do it. So I will, in a couple of weeks, Dan, thank you. In a couple of weeks, I feel the same way. In a couple of weeks, I will be gone. I will be out. And really just, first of all, thank you. Thank you for loving my family enough for giving us a break. And it's awesome. I get to tell my kids how much, hey, our church loves us and they are for us and they want to see us healthy. And there is a unique weight of being a senior pastor that is different than any other role. And so we're trying to get away and get some rest. And I might be able to go to church with my kids. You know, it's a weird thing. In 14 years, I have taken my kids to church all of maybe 5 times. And every time is like at 6 a.m. when Megan's gone. So I get to bring them with me. And so we'll get to do that together. And it'll just be a really sweet time. So thank you. I thank you for loving us enough to do that. And I will answer that in a second. And you're in good hands. Like, we have an incredible staff here who's going to do a great job. So I will be preaching next week. And after that, I will be out for a month. So as I've been preparing to be gone for a month over the last couple of years, there's like a lot of things going through my mind about what do I want to do while I'm gone. And I'm just going to give you a little insight into what happens in my mind and my soul as I think about being away for a month, because it's an unusual thing, right? Like I don't normally get 2 days off in a row. Like I kind of get like most of Saturday and Monday, and so like being gone for a whole chunk is a little bit unique. And so here's where my mind goes. Here's what I want to do. Number one, I want to have like a nice, slow season of great slow mornings. Right? And so I'm talking really sleeping in, 6:30, 7, get a nice cup of decaf coffee, go sit in the backyard, go read something, have some good conversation with my wife, and just take it real slow. Like, that sounds incredible. And I also want to wake up at like 4:30 and get 17 things done before my kids wake up. Like, I have both of those desires. I want to spend every day with each one of my kids. I got 3 daughters, 13, 11, and 8, and I'm in a season where, man, my 13-year-old, I figure I got 4, maybe 5 summers left with her, and so I really want to spend a ton of time with her. And my 8-year-old, like she'll let me read to her still, which is super precious. And my 11-year-old, like we can play basketball together and watch sports and have fun hanging out. And I want to spend all of my time with them. And I want to spend all of my time chasing my own hobbies by myself, right? I want a mountain bike. I want a dirt bike. I want to climb something. I want to kill something. I want to fish. I want to build something. Like I want to do anything with water. I want to do it all without the distraction of my kids. I want to spend time with my entire family, right? My wife, my kids, all together, because that's really sweet and precious. And I want to spend time with just my wife, because she's my favorite person, my best friend. I want to spend time with old friends, right? Some of my closest friends on this planet I've had since 3rd grade, since elementary school, since middle school, high school. I want to spend time with them. And I also want to spend time with new friends. Right, I love meeting new people, and I love just like, oh yeah, I'd really love to get to know new people. And I love spending time with my family, right? And I have 3 of them, right? And so with every one of those families, I'm like, oh man, I'd love to spend time with this family, and I'd love to spend time with this family, and I'd love to spend time with this family. And it's family, so it's hard and messy, and we can have great arguments, and it's super fun, and it's good, and I love it. But I can't do all of it, even though I want to do all of it all the time. Just being honest, I want to do all of it all the time. And I can look at every season of life, and I can be envious of any season very easily. Right? I can look at someone who's in their early 60s, they're retired, and I can go like, that looks like fun. Right? I can look at someone who's in college, and I can go, dang, what would it be like to run that hard and not be that tired? Right? I can look at someone who's like 95 and go, dude, you're close to glory. That looks pretty great too, right? And so I can look at all these seasons. I can think about Corvallis. I'm like, I want to be here all summer because the best 3 parts of Corvallis are June, July, and August, right? Just like being a teacher, right? Best 3 parts, June, July, and August, right? And I want to be gone all summer, right? The Seychelles, the Cook Islands, everyone I know apparently is in Alaska this week. My parents are there. Ron King and his wife are there right now. My friend James was there last week. I got a pastor, D. Duke, up in Jefferson. He's saying, hey, Josh, come up to Alaska. You can come here for free, and you can fish all you want. I promise you, guaranteed, you'll fly home with 50 pounds of fillets. And I'm like, I want to be there all summer, right? It is easy for my soul to want everything in every season. Right, and it's not just me, and it's not just July, right? It's a lot of us, right? I was driving with my kids the other day. We're on our way from school, and my 13-year-old turns to my 8-year-old, and she goes, you have no idea how easy your life is right now. She's like, you have no homework, you have no stress. It's a true story. I kind of just look at her and smile. Oh, yeah, 13's tough. And that's all of us, right? We want every season that we're not in. And we want it all the time, and we want it all right now. Today, as we open up our Bibles, we're going to look at Solomon. We're going to look at his words, where he's going to talk about these different seasons that we are in and how he's going to pull out for a bit here and say how we can enjoy the season that we're in rather than always longing to be in a different season, only to get to that season and wish you were somewhere else. Right? So we started this study in Ecclesiastes 2 weeks ago. A fascinating book. Ecclesiastes, kind of a weird word, right? It comes from the Greek word ekklesia, which means church or gathering. Ecclesiastes simply means the one who is speaking to the gathering. It is, we believe, the story of King Solomon's life. Right? King Solomon lived about 1,000 years before Jesus. He was born about 1,000 years before he came. And he is the son of King David. And he lived a significant portion of his adult life apart from being a follower of God. He chased all kinds of things. In the book, he calls it life under the sun. So this is life away from God. And his story is unfolding throughout this book. And he says, here's what it was like. He has a very unique story, too, because he, unlike a lot of people who got everything taken away from them, he was given everything. He had an opportunity that you and I will never, ever have, and he got to live a life of like, hey, here's everything I ever thought I wanted, and I'm going to spell it out. I'm going to show you what it was like, and it never really gave my soul the satisfaction that I always longed for. And he has what I believe is a bit of a prodigal son moment towards the end of his life, and he's writing to say, hey, I want you to learn from the end of my life. I want you to learn from the mistakes that I made. I don't want you to have to go down the same road that I went down. I want you to learn what it was like chasing life away from God, and I want you to see what that's like. And he kind of lays that out in the first chapter, his main thesis. And then the rest of the book, chapter by chapter, is him answering rebuttals to this question, right? As if people were saying, yeah, Solomon, but have you tried this? And he's going, oh, yeah, I've tried that. But have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Because we can all think of the one exception that if I just got this, then maybe, just maybe, I would be happy. And Solomon's going, oh, no, I tried it. Let me spell it all out for you. And so last week, if you were here, and we kind of walked through what it was like for him to try all these different things, kind of a few things at a time here. And if you studied the book, you would have seen this throughout the week on your own in your journal, kind of walked us through some of these things. He started out in chapter 2, and he said, I sought pleasure and entertainment, right? And it's a cultural moment that we're in that we always think, hey, if I just had more entertainment, maybe I could be satisfied. Maybe I could be happy, right? If I could find more pleasure. And we live in this world where we're constantly seeking entertainment. Like it's everywhere, this drive for entertainment. And no matter what it is, we're all trying to find our own forms of entertainment, right? So last Saturday, my family and I, we went on a hike. We went to the Blue Pool. Anyone ever been to the Blue Pool, Mackenzie Trail? It's stunningly beautiful. You know who else was at the Blue Pool? Literally all of Oregon. I mean, there was 4.6 million people in the parking lot. I mean, it felt like I had to hitchhike from the highway just to get to the starting point. Like, like we're all seeking entertainment. And yet we live in a time period where we are more entertained than we've ever been before. We have more pleasure at our fingertips than we've ever had. And do you think we've actually arrived? No. Right? And Solomon says, hey, I had more pleasure than you could ever long for, and it didn't give me what I wanted. He says, I sought progress, right? Chapter 2, verse 4. He said, I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted them all kinds of fruit trees. I made for myself pools from which to water the forests of growing trees. He says, build all you want. He says, I spent 180,000 slaves 7 years to build the temple. Like, and if that wasn't enough, I spent 13 years building my own house with those same 180,000 people. He says, I built everything you could ever want. So your nice little kitchen upgrade, like, come on. Like, I did that times 1,000, and it doesn't give you what you think you want. Right? Because what are we chasing? When we're chasing progress, ultimately, what are we after? We're after new. And we love that. We love this circle and this chase of new. I want a new kitchen. Well, after the kitchen, I want a bathroom. Well, after the bathroom, I want a car. Then after the car, maybe the backyard could get a little nicer. And after the backyard, well, maybe I could find a boyfriend. Maybe I could find a new job. And new. The problem with new is once you get it, it's not new anymore. Right? We love the chase. We love the pursuit. You talk to elite level athletes. Right? What do they fall in love with? The pursuit. Right? It's the chase. It's like once you get the thing, it's like, because what I really loved is the newness, is the pursuit, is that pursuit of progress. And Solomon says, I tried everything. Still didn't give me what I thought I wanted. He goes on, he says, I sought power and wealth. He had more power and wealth than you and I will ever imagine. He says, I sought living for the next generation. That was interesting in 18 and 19 of chapter 2. He says, well, maybe it's not just about my life. Maybe I can live for other people. Maybe I can live for my kids after me. Right? And there's something to that, right? He says in Proverbs, he writes Proverbs as well, he says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Right? So you should be doing something that leaves some sort of legacy. But he goes down the mental rabbit hole of, well, what if I'm going to put all my effort and energy into my kids? And you just play it out, right? Well, what if I chase all their sports and I get them to all the activities and I put all of my time and effort into that? Well, what happens when they turn 23 and they start resenting you for all the time you spent taking them to sports instead of other things? Or what happens when they walk away from you and they're like, hey, I don't appreciate you for this, so mom and dad, I just need some distance. He says, that's crazy painful. Like, I can't just live for my kids. And he gets to this super dark moment at the end of chapter 2. If you were studying and reading this last week, you would have read these words, 3 or 4 crazy, painful words, very honest words in verse 17. Solomon says, so I hated life. Man, what's it like to be in a spot where you go, I keep trying all these things, and it's not working. So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me. For all is vanity and a striving after wind. And in verse 20, he says this. He says, I turned about and gave my heart up to despair. Right? Maybe you're here today and you're in that season where you're just like, hey, the things I've been trying in life just doesn't seem to be working. And maybe you're like, if I'm honest, I don't love my life. And if I'm honest, I look around at other people and they seem to be doing fine and they seem to have it together, and I would really like to trade my life for someone else's life. And if we're really honest, we may be in a spot where, like Solomon, we say, so I hated life. It's at this point that Solomon then asks the question, well, what's the point then? Like, if you get to this point and you're trying all these things and it's not working, what's the point? It's a dark spot. And then towards the end of chapter 2, and you saw this in the journals, we did a little study section, and I think it's verse 22 to 24. He comes up for air a little bit, and he says, hey, but there actually is hope in the middle of all this hardship. He says there is a way to go through life and to experience life where you can find joy. And he's going to talk about this in chapter 3 today. He says there is a way to embrace every season. To not just wish that you were in another season, to not just wish that you were someone else, to not just be depressed and frustrated by the season that you're in, but there's a way to embrace each season for the goodness that is there. And we're going to watch this unfold, and we're going to do it by looking at 4 different ways to embrace the season of life that we're in, as I believe Solomon's kind of coming up for air in the beginning of chapter 3 here. So we're going to look at 4 things. 4 ways to embrace each season. Number 1, embrace the opportunities and limitations. Number 2, embrace God's justice over all seasons. Number 3, embrace the work you have. Number 4, embrace and fear God in all seasons. So if you are able, would you stand with me? We're going to open up with reading verses 1 through 8, as we're going to read the very beginning of life under the sun. When I'm done reading, I say, this is the word of the Lord. And to honor God's word, you can respond with thanks be to God, giving thanks for the word that is eternal. We read these words starting in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1. I read from the English Standard Version if you're on a phone. For everything there is a season, and for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You can grab a seat. This is a poem. It would be really fun to kind of go through every single line. It's filled with parallelism all over the place. There's 14 different statements, couplets. There's 7 of them. And ultimately, if you were to look at all of them, this is Solomon. What he's doing here is he's looking at the totality of life, and he's summarizing it in a poem form. So you got to remember, not everyone was able to read. Most people weren't. People didn't have the Bible in their homes, so they would learn these as songs, as if Solomon was saying, hey, in whatever season you're in, I want you to remember the flow of life, that it's coming, it's going. There's constantly new seasons that we're in, and through all of it, God's doing something. And I want you to recognize that in every season, there's opportunities and limitations as we look at the totality of the seasons that he represents here. Right? And so the natural question is, what season am I in? Right? As I'm looking through this list, all of us find ourselves in different seasons. Right? If you're here today, maybe you're in a season of something new. Right? Maybe you just recently graduated. Right? Maybe it's time for summer, right? We recognize that. Like all of our college kids are gone right now. It's a new season, right? You may be in an older season, right? In a season where, hey, life's not new anymore. Maybe you're seasoned. I was talking to a friend today. Today's her 80th birthday, right? That's not a new season. That's a seasoned season, right? Where are you at, Marilyn? That's awesome. Hey, happy birthday, right? Maybe you're new in your faith, and that comes with new opportunities. Maybe you're a new parent, right? Maybe you're in a season of loss. You're trying to figure out, well, what are the opportunities? What are the limitations in this season, right? Every season comes with challenges and opportunities, right? And seasons come and they go. They change quickly. Notice in this poem, it's like seasons are constantly coming and going, right? I think about a season I'm in right now. I was at home. I study from home on Wednesday mornings, and I'm at home and I'm studying in the office, and typically my kids are gone, they're at school, but since it's summer this last week, my 8-year-old comes into the room and she comes and she sits on my lap. She sits there for about 10 minutes, and in that moment I'm just like, this is awesome. Like, I love this season of life. I'm going to embrace this moment because I know that it's going to end soon, right? Because I know my 11-year-old's not doing this, and my 13-year-old certainly isn't doing this. Like, she just wants to be with her friends. So I'm going to embrace this season. But when it goes, right, like when that season changes, there's going to be new opportunities. The biggest one I'm looking forward to is no more stinking car seats. Like, I cannot wait for that season to come. So I'm going to trade cuddles for car seats, right? And I get it. They have their benefits, but it'll be really nice to not have to deal with those anymore. But what I don't want to do is be in the season of cuddles and say, man, I'm just sad right now because this is going to end, right? But I can embrace the season and say, hey, that's good right now, and next season there's going to be something else that's going to come, and that's going to be great as well. So Solomon starts this whole thing out by saying, in every season, there's opportunities and there's limitations. As he starts it out, though, in verses 1 through 8, notice that this is still life under the sun. He hasn't mentioned God at all. So you look at the first 8 verses, and anyone can do this, right? You don't have to be a Christian at all to recognize, hey, I'm in this season. There's opportunities, there's challenges. But he gets to the end of that and he goes, well, I've tried all this, and without God, it still seems pointless. Like, it still seems meaningless. In verse 9, he makes that quite clear. He's like, what's the gain for all this toil? And so he kind of pulls out from beyond the sun here for a minute, and he's going to go, hey, you need to look at what God's doing in the midst of all this to find real joy, not just be stuck in the middle of this life under the sun. And so we get to point number 2, where he talks about embracing God's justice over all seasons. Now, this is important. It hits home for a lot of us. He's talking about, hey, I can go through all these seasons, but what happens when going through all these seasons, you find yourself really frustrated by what you see in the world? And he talks about what does it look like to be frustrated by what you see in 2 primary areas. And I don't know if you've ever been discouraged by this, but Solomon certainly was. He says, what happens when I'm insanely discouraged by what I see in the government and by what I see in the church? You've probably never been there before. And you think I'm joking. Watch what he says here. Okay, look at verse 10. We'll start with 10, and then we're going to jump to 16. He says, I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He, God, has made everything beautiful in its time. Okay, so God is entering into this now, and he's saying, hey, God's making things beautiful. In all seasons, there's something that's beautiful. Now then watch this. When he's super discouraged by the injustices that he sees, both in government and in the church, listen to this, verse 16. He says, moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, right, that's government, even there was wickedness. And in the place of righteousness, that's the church, even there was wickedness. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, right, the government and the church, for there is a time for every matter and for every work. Right, when you're discouraged by what you see, and we get discouraged by all kinds of different things, he says, hey, God's going to bring to justice all the injustices of the world, right? So when you're seeing things that just deeply hurt you, when you're seeing things that you're just like, I can't comprehend why this would happen, Solomon's saying, hey, God's going to deal with that. See, there's a longing in all of us for something. I got a picture. I'm going to throw it up here. Old Lady Justice here, right? We all have this longing for government to act in this role. Right? The longing of every human heart is that government will act in 3 different ways, right? It's represented by the blindfold, by the scales, and by the sword. Right? The blindfold, what does it represent? It represents impartiality. We want our government systems to be impartial. Right? The scale, what's the scale? It represents fairness. We want our governments to operate with fairness. And what's the sword represent? It represents righteous judgment, right? Upholding what is right. And unfortunately, like, we live in a fallen, broken world where sometimes, often, governments fail us, systems fail us, people fail us. And so we look at that and we go, that's broken in the world that I experience. And Solomon says, hey, you're right, it is. And one day, God will make it right. Right? One day, God will uphold all justice. Right? And not only is that out there, but he says, look in the mirror. It's in places of righteousness. So that's the church, that's in you and I if we call ourselves believers. Right, so put yourself in Solomon's shoes for a minute. If you're Solomon, who's your dad? Your dad is King David. Right? And how were you born? You were born because your dad took someone else's wife, had her husband murdered, and you got her pregnant. That's how you were born. And this is someone who is a leader in the church, who is a leader of the nation, who is a praiser of God. That's a discouraging way to start things off. And he's going, wait, there's brokenness in the church? Right? For those of you who've been around the church long enough, that's not surprising. Right? I'm going to fail you because I'm broken. Like, churches will fail you. We have one Jesus Christ who will not fail you. We put our hope in him, not in men, not in systems, not in governments, and not even in church governance. And Solomon says, hey, for the righteous, even there is injustice. Put our hope in God's justice over all seasons. Man, where do we need to find encouragement in that today? For some of us, we're putting our hope in things that Solomon says, hey, don't put your hope there. Put your hope in the justice of God, not the justice of men. Number 3, he says, embrace the work you have. He says, if you want to enjoy your life and find satisfaction, embrace the work that you have. We start in verse 12. He says, I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. Jump down 10 verses in verse 22. He says, so I saw that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his work, for that is his lot. Who can bring him to see what will be after him? See, we live in a day and age where we want to kind of get past the season of work and just get to the season of retirement. Right? It's celebrated everywhere. Fire, retire early, just be a consumer, not a producer. Right? But Solomon's saying, hey, work is a pre-fall gift. Like in Genesis 1 and 2, that's when work was given to us, not after Genesis 3. Right? So in other words, when God created the world, he created it, he put Adam and Eve in the garden, and he said, now work. And that work is a gift. But I think sometimes we can look at work and go like, I can't stand the toil. Like, it's frustrating. And it is, but we can find joy in that. We can recognize like, hey, God's given us hands that produce, and that is a gift. So where do I need to change my thinking when it comes to work? Maybe like you need to realign and get in a position that makes more sense for how God's created you to be. But don't think that you're created not to work. Like, and that doesn't mean that you don't, like, not all of us have a 9 to 5, but we need to be working towards something. We need to be producing. God's given us this ability. And Solomon says, enjoy the work. It's a gift. Don't try to escape the work. And enjoy your summer and get back to work. Lastly, embrace and fear God in all seasons. So let's go back to where we started with the end of chapter 2 when Solomon says, hey, I hated life. He says, I gave myself up for despair. And then I thought about it and I thought, you know what? Okay, I can embrace the season of life that I'm in. And I can embrace its opportunities and I can embrace its limitations. And I can embrace the fact that even when there's injustice in the world, when there's things that I don't agree with, I can embrace the fact that God will make it right someday. And I can embrace the work I have, and then he lands with, and now we need to embrace God in all seasons. And we're going to see this in verses 14 through 15, and I'm going to read this from the Message. It's a paraphrase version of what we normally look at as a word-for-word translation, but I just want you to hear this. And as you hear this, I want you to take it the right way, and I'll try to explain this here in a minute. Solomon says this in terms of embracing God in all seasons. He says, I've also concluded that whatever God does, that's the way it's going to be. Always. No addition, no subtraction. God's done it and that's it. That's so we'll quit asking questions and simply worship in holy fear. Whatever was is. Whatever will be is. That's how it always is with God. Now, the improper way of looking at this is saying, well, just don't ask questions to God. Just accept everything. That's not what he's saying. But what he's saying is sometimes we put ourselves in a mental spiral when we ask questions that ultimately we just don't get answers to sometimes. Sometimes we ask questions about, God, why am I in this season? Why is my life the way that it is? Why did this thing happen to me? Why did this happen to my friend? Right? And we can ask ourselves these questions, and sometimes we get answers, and sometimes we don't get those answers. And when we don't get those answers, this is Solomon saying, hey, sometimes you just got to leave it up to the Lord. And you got to follow him, and you got to trust him, even when you don't get all the answers that you want. See, sometimes I like to think, like, what would it be like to be a first century Roman slave? Just put yourself here for a minute. You're in slavery when Jesus is walking the earth. Maybe you're somewhere and you see him and you see this crowd of people and you're like, oh, that's interesting. A lot of people are following this person. You're hearing rumors about him. You're hearing rumors that he claims to be God. And you're like, okay, well, I'm still a slave. And then Jesus is killed and he raises again from the dead. And it's 5 years later, and someone comes to you and says, hey, here's the story of Jesus Christ. Here's the hope that he has for you. And you're like, okay. And I'm still a slave. And where's the good news? Now, does it mean that there's no good news? No, absolutely not. What are you hearing? You're hearing, oh, someone loves me in the middle of this condition, right? You're hearing that, man, there's a worldview that says, like, we should treat each other with dignity and we should not own one another. And man, one day we will be set free. Like, there will be a movement towards that because this is who God is. He loves freedom. Right? I'm hearing that God's paying for my sin and that I can have eternal life with him, that life here is really hard and that one day I will be with him. There's a lot of incredible things that you hear, and Lord willing, you're giving your life to him, even if your situation doesn't change. And you still probably have a lot of questions. God, why would you keep me in this spot? Right? Why am I still a slave? And it's in those moments where sometimes God doesn't answer all the questions that we want him to answer, whether that's with our kids or with our work or with our health or with whatever religious, political, whatever it is. And sometimes God just says, hey, I need you to trust me on this. I need you to follow me and obey me. I've got this. And I may not give you all the answers. Sometimes you got to trust me. So as we close, and we tie it into our bigger vision, right? This year, we've been looking at this question, you have heard, but is it true? Right? We have heard there's a lot of different ways to chase life and to find meaning. And Solomon's going to say, I've tried it. It's not true. Let me tell you what's true. Let me tell you how to embrace every season of life that you're in. To embrace the limits and the opportunities. Right? Let me tell you how to embrace God's sovereign love over nations and over churches, that God will make all things right someday. Let me show you what it's like to embrace your work. And let me show you what it's like to embrace the Lord, to fear him, even when we don't have all the answers. What does it look like to write that out for this week in our lives? You know, every season changes. That season could be a week. Everything could change in a week from now. So the question for us in our journals, in our time here in just a second is, God, in this season, today, this week, with what's right in front of me right now, how am I embracing this season? I'm going to pray and give us an opportunity to reflect on this. Father God, we come before you and we recognize the gift that is life that you've given us. And we want to be a people who see the seasons for what they are. And we don't want to be a people who, in the middle of every season, are just longing for something else. God, I pray that we can learn from the wisdom of Solomon, who told us first, hey, embrace this season. It may be a season of loss, and it may be a season of hardship and tragedy. Maybe a season of something new, maybe a season of opportunity. And God, whatever season we're in, I pray that we'd find the joy in it, that we would recognize the limitations of the season, that we can't do everything, that I can't have summer all in Corvallis and all around the world at the same time. God, I pray that we would be a people who recognize your justice in all things someday. And that does give me peace, because there's a lot of things that discourage me. God, help me to embrace work. Embrace the fact that you created us to be contributors, not just consumers. God, where I have a tendency to want to just consume and not contribute, I pray that I would have a change of heart, that there is a balance in a season. We're going to get into this next week. God, but that I would have a right heart towards work, and that I would recognize it as the gift that it is. And then lastly, God, with all the questions that we may have, and we have them, and rightfully so, and we should ask questions. We never want to be in a spot where we're just like, I'm not going to ask any questions. God, you encourage us to ask. And sometimes you don't give us the answers. And when we don't have answers as to why things happen the way that we do, the way that they do, God, I pray that we'd be people who just say, you know what, Lord, I fear you and I trust you. You have shown me through Christ that I am infinitely loved more than I could ever imagine. And I can trust you, that you will go to the ends of the earth for me. God, and I can rest in that, and I can embrace the season of life I'm in regardless of what's in front of me. God, I pray that we would hold on to you, and thank you for holding on to us. It is in the powerful name of Jesus Christ that I pray. Amen. I love you guys.